Early humans were plagued by supervolcanoes. Huge eruptions closed off migration routes for our ancestors. The East African Rift, the Great Rift area of Africa on the east, is a rift caused by Africa slowly being pulled apart. A study found volcanic activity between 320,000 and 170,000 years ago. This coincides with the arrival of Homo sapiens around 200,000 years ago, and these eruptions might have caused migrations and separated populations from areas. This by Abigail Beale, Mail Online. We have tremendous maps showing the migrations. Around 200,000 years ago, the first modern humans appeared in Africa. At the same time, according to a new study, a series of huge volcanoes were erupting in Ethiopia at the time. This might have caused them to migrate from that area. The map shows us potential migration routes into Europe from Africa, into India, China, from there into Russia, from there into Indonesia and the islands, and then, of course, down to Australia, New Zealand, across from Russia towards the east, northeast, through Alaska, down the west coast of North America, into North America, and across Mexico and into South America. This is the Great Migration. Around 200,000 years ago, Homo sapiens were living in Africa, and at the same time, according to this study, a series of huge volcanoes were erupting in Ethiopia. Ethiopia, as we know, is just south of Egypt. This unusual activity dramatically changed the environment our earliest ancestors lived in and might have caused them to migrate from the area, causing evolutionary and cultural changes. Concerning the ancient supervolcanoes, Dr. William Hutchison from the University of Oxford studied what the volcanic activity in the East Africa Rift was like thousands of years ago when our early ancestors occupied that area. They found explosive volcanic activity occurred between 320,000 and 170,000 years ago. These were very significant eruptions. Dr. Hutchison told the media, he says, perhaps of the scale of the eruption of Krakatoa in Indonesia in 1883. The Krakatoa eruption in 1883 ejected around 10 cubic kilometers, 2.4 cubic miles of material, making it a supervolcano, and one of the largest eruptions of the world. Although the center of the two volcanoes are not directly connected to each other, it's likely an elevated period of magma movement from the mantle to the crust causing these eruptions. The East African Rift is a rift caused by Africa slowly being pulled apart. Even today we see huge cracks happening there. It will at one point split the East Africa area off from the remaining of Africa, causing the ocean to flood in, separating them. Now, one section of the rift, which has 10 million people living next to it, runs through Ethiopia. The pulling apart of the continent causes magma to rise up, of course. It's a fault line right there, creating pulses of volcanism. Now, a study led by William Hutchison, while he was completing his PhD at the University of Oxford, looked into what the volcanic activity was like thousands of years ago when our early ancestors occupied this area of the Rift Valley. The study found explosive volcanic activity did occur between 320,000 and 170,000 years ago. Dr. Hutchison, who now works at St. Andrews University, studied the Aluto and Corbeti volcanoes and dated eruptions using argon isotopes and radiocarbon dating. His team compared the results with other known rift volcanoes and found the rate of volcanism between 320,000 and 170,000 years ago was 5 times higher than the average rate of volcanism for the rift. These were very significant eruptions. This is what Hutchison explains. The Aluto volcano caldera was created during the explosive eruptions of 300,000 years ago. These explosive volcanoes, the volcanism would have drastically altered the landscapes and, of course, the ecosystems occupied by our earliest human ancestors. Perhaps of the scale of the eruption of Krakatoa in Indonesia, 1883. The Krakatoa eruption, 1883, ejected around 3.4 cubic miles, which is 10 cubic kilometers, of material, making it a supervolcano, one of the largest eruptions in the world. Although the center of the two volcanoes are not directly connected to each other, it's likely an elevated period of magma movement from the mantle to the crust causing these eruptions. The pulse in volcanism coincided with the arrival of Homo sapiens, modern human that is, in the region around 200,000 years ago, which marks a key point in human evolution. The pulse in volcanism coincides with the arrival of Homo sapiens in the region 200,000 years ago, and also begs the question to be answered: to what extent these changes in the landscape and environments occupied by our earliest human ancestors might have influenced human evolution and migration. This is what Dr. Hutchison asks. The volcanoes would have significantly changed the landscape and environment our ancestors lived in, of course. These eruptions would have buried the rift floor in volcanic ejecta, disrupting water sources and habitats across wide areas. The collapsed remnants of the volcanic edifices also formed great calderas or craters in the rift floor. We don't yet know how hominin populations responded to these episodes of explosive volcanisms, for example, whether entire populations uprooted before the major eruptions took place. However, it's certainly conceivable that the eruptions precipitated migrations and separated populations which might have led to evolutionary and cultural changes. Hutchison said the impact of the volcanoes on our evolution needs further study. And now exactly how these volcanic eruptions, the major volcanic events, might affect large-scale evolutionary models remains to be established, but they should certainly not be ignored. Further interdisciplinary research needed to understand the scale of these eruptions to figure out whether these could have closed down rift migration corridors and for how long. It's opened up a lot of exciting avenues for future research. The timeline of the complex evolution of man: 55 million years ago, first primates evolved. 15 million years ago, hominidae, great apes. 8 million years ago, first gorillas evolved, later chimp and human lineage. 5.5 million years ago, Ardipithecus, early proto-human. 4 million years ago, Australopithecus appeared. They had brains no larger than a chimpanzee's. 2.8 million years ago, LD3501 appeared and may have been the first Homo family. 2.7 million years ago, Paranthropus lived in woods and had massive jaws for chewing. 2.3 million years ago, Homo habilis first thought to have appeared in Africa. 1.85 million years ago, first modern hand emerges. 1.8 million years ago, Homo ergaster begins to appear in fossil record. 1.6 million years ago, hand access becomes the first major technological innovation. 800,000 years ago, early humans control fire and create hearths. Brain size increases. 607,000 years ago, a new DNA analysis shows the first Neanderthals emerging. 400,000 years ago, Neanderthals begin to spread across Europe and Asia. 200,000 years ago, Homo sapiens, modern humans appear in Africa. 40,000 years ago, modern humans reach Europe. Now, the thing is that we know that 74,000 years ago we had a supervolcano erupt. That was Toba. and supposedly wiped out most of the life on Earth. And from what one of the previous videos we did an article on, the anthropologists claimed that only 1,000 couples made it. It was a type of a bottlenecking. Very few humans in total were left alive to repopulate the Earth. And I will be making a new video on that, I guess right after this one, because it's very important for us to know the unbelievable destruction that a supervolcano can create. Now, supervolcanoes, from what we know, I'll leave a link below for you on the Wikipedia. There are 20 supervolcanoes on Earth today. Sorry, there may be more. I don't know if they count the one in Germany as a supervolcano, but it is. And there's also another one in Scotland. But there's others that have been very old and maybe they're forgotten. But anyway, we do have at least 20 known supervolcanoes. 2 of them, Long Valley Caldera and Yellowstone, are in the United States. And supervolcano, large volcano that has had the eruption with a volcanic explosivity index VEI of 8, the largest possible value on the index. It means that the volume of deposits for that eruption is greater than 1,000 cubic kilometers, 240 cubic miles. Supervolcanoes occur when magma in the mantle rises into the crust but is unable to break through it, and pressure builds in large and growing magma pool under the crust and is unable to contain the pressure. This can occur at hotspots, for example, Yellowstone caldera, or at subduction zones, Toba. That's the one that erupted 74,000 years ago. Large volume supervolcanic eruptions are also often associated with large igneous provinces. An extremely large accumulation of igneous rocks, including intrusive sills and dikes and extrusive lava flows and tephra deposits, arising when magma travels through the crust towards the surface. The formation of large igneous provinces, LIPs, is variously attributed to mantle plumes or to processes associated with divergent plate tectonics. The formation of some of the LIPs in the past 500 million years coincided with the time of mass extinction and rapid climate changes, which has led to numerous hypotheses about the causal relationships. LIPs are fundamentally different from any other currently active volcanoes or volcanic systems. So yeah, huge extinction events. Okay. And they can occur over huge areas with lava and volcanic ash. These can cause long-lasting climate changes and trigger the beginning of a small ice age and threaten species with extinction, of course. The Urunwai eruption of New Zealand's Taupo volcano about 26,500 years ago was the world's most recent super eruption at a VEI 8 eruption. And from what scientists have told us, Earth experiences a super eruption every 17,000 years. The last super eruption was 26,500 years ago, so that makes Earth about 10,000 years overdue for a super eruption. God forbid. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, We also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.